Okay, that's great. Well, I think we're going to make a start, and I'm just going to give you a little introduction and a little bit of briefing, I guess, as to what this webinar, the purpose is for today. But first of all, to introduce myself to those of you that I don't know already, my name's James Markey, and I'm one of the co-founders and I'm the acting CEO for our startup Universal Simulation. Over the last few years, I've worked with multiple haptic and VR simulation businesses, and a lot of you I know already from past dealings with, and I still do a lot of that as well. But I've worked in the past in technical roles, working with the development teams, as well as sales, customer services, hence why I know most of you from the universities. And the whole reason we're here today is really to see how haptic and VR simulation can help us get back to really effective teaching in universities for the future doctors and dentists that are getting trained. So for those of you, and I know we've got a few that are completely brand new to the whole haptics and VR, so I thought I'd take a step back for a moment and just explain what those two things really are and where they come into play. So this is one of the haptic devices, and I've actually got one here with me today for the live demos. And haptics essentially allows us to add in the sense of touch to virtual simulations. So we can be looking as if we're doing something within the simulation, drilling a tooth or doing an injection, for instance, as we'll see later on. And the haptics gives us the forced feedback so that it feels like we're actually doing what we're seeing. And obviously that leads perfectly on to the virtual reality side. So in its most basic level, just the simulation, these 360-degree immersive environments, but also with VR headsets, allowing us to get this sense of sight. So just to, again, backtrack a little bit for those of you that are new to haptics and VR and why it comes into play in universities that are teaching these medical subjects. Because at the moment, universities use real people to practice on, often in student clinics that are attached to the university. And in most subjects, we use plastic models. So in dentistry, we use plastic teeth on phantom heads like you see there for students to drill on and practice. And also for things like local anesthesia, we use plastic mannequins to practice the actual procedure if we're not practicing on another student. And obviously there's a lot to downsize these in terms of, with the plastic mannequins, we start to see where the puncture holes are. So they're not very effective after the first few uses. And plastic teeth, for instance, only have a single density, when our teeth inside our mouth actually have the enamel, the dentine, and going through to the pulp. And all of that gives us a different density, a different force feedback than what does a single plastic tooth. So that's how we train at the moment in the majority of cases. And some of the challenges, obviously that leads to we're potentially putting patients at risk if it's too early on in their training or they're not competent enough. And the consumables for a lot of these plastic models soon rack up because we're replacing them every time for students to get enough practice before they go on to those real patients. But it's not just that. We also have that in most countries, students have been paying more and more for their studies the last decade or so. And students have grown up on technology. They've grown up on their iPhones, their Androids, and they expect this level of educational delivery when they're paying or taking out loans even for their student fees. And the last challenge is really being able to, in the medical subjects, be able to provide this objective information. Because often we're judging students based on the end result. But we haven't got much data around the technique and how they get there. So that's some of the things we're hoping to address. And I can't do a webinar at the moment without mentioning it, because obviously we have extra complications at the moment through the spread of diseases in traditional clinics with aerosols and everything else. Social distancing, so we're having the space between different simulation units. And how do we best support at-risk students as well? So the solutions at the moment for that, you've got a large capital investment for high fidelity simulation, which works amazingly well. But not all universities can afford that. And other solutions tend to be fixed for a single subject, a single use, built for purpose. So that's the preliminary for the webinar today. And very quickly, we'll go over to the MentorMeter and see who's with us today. So if you've not logged on already, to the right on our website, you have the MentorMeter panel, and above is the code to be able to get on and answer the questions. Fantastic. So it's great to see so many of you here today. I was expecting just to do this to a few universities that had requested, but it's amazing to see the spread as well. The UK I was expecting, France I was expecting, and there's been a lot of inquiries from the USA who have signed up, so that's amazing. Thank you very much. So I'll get over to the MentorMeter and we'll switch over to the first question. It looks like some of you have already been able to answer that. Just to find out what the mix is like today of people that have experience with haptic simulators already, just to make sure I don't cover things that are too basic and repeat myself, or whether we need to go through a more thorough introduction. Okay, so the results have just split. So before it was more yes and now more no. Okay, so I guess we'll make sure we cover as much ground as we need to. And you're welcome to keep answering on the MentorMeter and use it as a question and answer panel as well. I'll come to it at the end and throughout if there's any questions I can provide some answers to. So today then, the purpose of universal simulation is to be able to provide a full solution that's accessible to more universities. So often you have companies which deal in one particular area, the hardware, so the simulators, the haptics, companies which deal with the software, companies like Fundamental VR, for instance, they deal in the software and make it agnostic, so it works on all the hardware. And these classroom setups. So you've got some which deliver all of this, but that obviously is included in the capital investment as well. And something we've been looking at, which we've had a lot of inquiries on recently, of course, is going remote. Can we use haptics and VR to teach students when they can't even get access to the university for their ordinary training? So I'll show you what we've got on some of that today. So universal simulation is the combination of that, and we're first going to go through the solution for the hardware. So the first choice is actually to keep the cost to the absolute minimum, is you've got the choice to build your own. So here in the haptics, and we've got one there behind my webcam from Haptic Fabriken. The accessories, so finger rest, the tool that you're using for the haptics, whether it's dentistry or local anesthesia. A laptop which is capable of running all these simulations. And again, part of the accessories, things like the foot pedal that activate drilling or whatever it might be for that simulation. Now, in that case, if you've got the technical skills to be able to do that, we can support you in the process of building your own. We have recommended specifications, but of course the downside is you're not guaranteed that these are going to run the simulations, and even if they do today, will they be capable of running the updates as the simulation improves? Because not everyone wants to be the person who has to test the software to see if it works on their own hardware. And this is some of the downsides of solutions which only offer the software. But we can provide that. We can provide a starter kit, like you've got one there in dentistry. And the other side is for universities which either don't have the technical capacity to be able to do that, or they want a more hassle-free, stable, that's long-term service, long-term support. We've got two models that we've been working on. The Model T to the right there is a desktop simulator, which is actually ready to go. We've done some prototypes already, and that's getting deployed into its first university in September, ready for the start of the academic year, which is super exciting for us. It's our first deployment for universal simulation. The second one there is Model L, which is a portable haptic device, and we've been working on a prototype the last couple of months to make sure it's going to be ready for all the future updates in the simulation as well. But there you see it. So our pre-built devices, both of them are currently at €10,000, and we're hoping that we'll be able to reduce that further as we provide more quantity across Europe or across the world, hopefully. So that's the hardware. Build your own or get a hassle-free pre-built surface. Whatever you choose, we can then move on and look at the options for the software. So the idea for Universal Simulation is to provide a simulation library for all of these. Now we've got Dentiversal, which is the basics of preclinic dentistry, and we're working on Anesthesia, local anesthetic training as well, which I'm going to show you very shortly in our live demo. Now these are available in an annual subscription, which comes with all the maintenance, the updates, everything else, or as a one-off purchase for the simulation. Now that's for individual purposes, but for institution licenses, if you're procuring more than 10 simulators, then we can provide an institutional license, and then you just purchase or build the simulators after that, and you connect as many as you want. So without further ado, we're going to head to the live demos. I haven't recorded any videos, so this is very much live, and we're going to hopefully have everything that's working. And we're going to go in order of development, because the first one we've got, which I've had a few emails on, so thank you ever so much for that. This is the simulation that we proposed for next year, 2021, and we'll be raising capital and everything else for it. But we've done our first mechanics demo, just to show that it's going to be possible. So let me bring you over into our setup. So here we go. So we've got the simulation. I'm now going to run it, and hopefully we won't have. There we go. So it looks like it's launched, and you should be able to see also I've got a second webcam just down here, so you can see the haptic device that I'm using today. So like I say, this is the really early prototype, just to show the concept and make sure the mechanics are working. So here we've got, I pick up the haptic device, and you can see somewhere in this scene my syringe that we've just done for this. And then the mechanics is, as I touch the model, I can feel it, and then as I pierce it, I can go through, and then there you see the haptics is now blocked, just like it would be in real life. So all I can do is move in and out with the syringe. So we've got a model of a face there, so potentially things like Botox. We've got the mouth there, so this would link into the dentistry that we were doing as well. And again, same mechanics working on there. And lastly, for the arm, IV injections, etc. And there you see the needle go in. The haptics is blocked. And what's important here, I can't show you the insides, but we've actually got different layers. So you get the different resistance as well, and you'll be able to locate the different veins, etc. So let me come out and pause the simulation on Anesthesia for you, and I'll come back to the presentation. So after the webinar, we've also got a team session, so you're welcome to join that afterwards and ask questions live, and I can give you some one-to-one demos as well. I'm trying to keep the webinar quick and snappy for everyone that it might be late or very early, or you're very pressed for. So that's Anesthesia, which is what we're planning for next year. The next one is Dentiversal Surgery. So this is for oral surgery simulation, and it requires a more advanced haptics. So I've got the basic one here that I'm going to run with the haptic device I have, a Geomagic Touch. But for the actual sensations of this, you do need a more powerful haptic device. We've sourced one, a brand new one called Apollo from Forsland, based in Sweden, Haptic Fabriken. So let's try to get up simulation. We had success on our first live demo. Hopefully we'll have another success with our second one. So here we go. So this one is closer to production. This is, well, we will be deploying it in September for this year, The actual production simulation should be ready for January. So here again, you can see me pick up the haptics, and just like before, I've got a tool now appearing in the simulation. And here, when I touch the jaw, I get the feedback from the haptics. Now, I can start to do some drilling. And as I push further, I get the resistance back. There we go. And then what you could start to see these holes being made. And then there we go. So I get the vibration from it as well. And as we work, we can switch over our tools. So we've now got this probe where I can actually go in. So I'm not drilling anymore, but I can actually go in and feel the work that I've done. So for some of you, this will be very familiar. You would have seen simulations like this before. But like I say, the idea is that we bring all of these simulations together and make it more accessible for more universities. And I'll show you some more exciting stuff in a moment as well. So that's dentiversal surgery, which is pretty much, well, it's ready to order and it's pretty much ready for deployment. And lastly, I'll get this one up as well. The last one is dentiversal preclinic, and hopefully that'll just be loading up now. There we go. So dentiversal preclinic is a very simple simulation for preclinical dentistry, and the simulation is just loading up in the background, and then we'll get that up on your screen. Here we go. So we've had success with 2 live demos so far. The first one there, sort of alpha, pre-alpha mechanics test, then with oral surgery, and now hopefully we're going to go over to dentiversal. Fantastic. So here you can see a very similar idea again, and this one is a little bit more built up. It's ready for order. We're deploying this in September already, and this one's ready to go. And this is really what's going to build the framework for the other simulations that we create. Right, so let me activate the drill, and hopefully you'll hear some of the sounds come through as well. Fab. So that's dentiversal preclinical, which allows us to teach the basic concepts of dentistry and get this haptic feedback for the drilling that we're doing as well. So to really teach students that when they're learning about the difference in density between enamel, dentine, and dropping through the pulp, they actually get the real sensations and they're able to translate that into their learning and their motor skills. So that's where we are with the free simulations at the moment. And these are the ones that are coming in under the sort of Universal Simulation brand. And we're hoping to build that out as time goes on. Like say, Anesthesia next year, we've got dentiversal ready to go. And then we hope to work with universities for more simulations as time goes on. So obviously, the whole reason is to make it more accessible. On our comparison, we're looking at a cost reduction of around 65% for the universities to invest in this simulation as opposed to high fidelity simulation. And we're also looking for universities to join our international experts panel to help with simulations. We've got Anesthesia and we've built our panel ideally for next year. And some of you I'm sure are here today, so thank you and hi again. And we'll be running a webinar next month as part of a small crowdfunding, which I'll talk about later, with some of these guys involved as well. We'd also like to hear from you for proposals for other simulations, as we will be raising finance and capital to invest in other simulations for the future. So please do get in contact with me afterwards if that's of interest for your university. So we've now covered hardware, we've covered the software, the current simulations and some of the future ones. And now we're going to look at the classroom setup. So this is connecting everything together, and also briefly about our projects for going remote. So a simulation suite. It basically looks like having as many simulators as you want, So as many simulators as you want, and you choose the software, you choose the simulations that you want. So you build up your simulation suite, and you can have this as a shared simulation suite so that it's used at different times for different subjects. These are all connected to either a local server, or we're going to put one in the cloud. And what's really exciting about this is you can actually connect this to your high fidelity simulation. So it allows you to expand your classroom and connect in with some of the functionality. So we've got 2 companies on board at the moment, and we're hoping that we'll be able to convince some of the other high fidelity simulators to join us on this journey and allow us to connect to their APIs for all their statistics and everything else. Because then this allows us to connect to the classroom setups, having programs to create new exercises, analyze all the data, and then also the integrations with your university, the intraoral scans, the CT scans coming into the classroom, and the 3D printing going out of the classroom as well. So like I say, we were looking at 65% cost reduction for single simulations, but in this classroom setup, if you combine 2 different subjects and put them into one simulation suite, you're looking at a cost reduction. We came up with a minimum of 80%, but allow you to draw your own comparisons as well. And lastly, for the training from home. So this is a project we're working on to go live in January with another university. Is they're actually going to have students take home the Model L and have it used at home to practice their motor skills, to reduce the need for them to come into the university as often as they would otherwise need to, but still get that training. So this then be linked to the database which is stored in the cloud, and allows them then to communicate with their teachers on their work as well, which would be super, super exciting, and that's what we're working on at the moment. So that's an overview of the whole universal simulation network that we're building. We're fundraising in September with Crowdfunder. We're actually part of the Santander Accelerator in the UK. And this is to fund additional equipment for our first university that we're going live in September. So we're going to crowdfund just some extra money to be able to deliver more to the university than they've actually paid for, which would be a fantastic thing for us to be able to do and get a good case study for universal simulation that we can use for the future as well. If you want to sign up, universal.co.uk/sign up. And what we'll also be doing is there's no equity being sold in this round. This is just a sort of starting crowdfunder. But what we will be doing is, if or when we raise finance from equity in the future, you'll actually be given a priority link if you've contributed to the first crowdfunder, so that you'll be able to invest in the company and get a slice of the equity back as well. So it turns into a community-driven initiative where we're helping universities and making it more accessible, and the universities or the individuals can share in that journey as well. So we've got some really, really exciting stuff coming up, and that's what will fund the simulations in the future as well, the development side. So look, a huge thank you. I'm sorry I ran through everything so quickly, but I don't want to bore anyone that's on this webinar either, because I appreciate you can't just put your hand up and call in. So what we're doing is I will stick around for the next 30 minutes, and I will be live on MS Teams. So I'm just going to launch it up now and test it myself to make sure it's working, make sure the connections are there. But otherwise, for those of you that don't have time or don't want to join the live call, a huge thank you for joining us today. I mean, even if you were just interested in finding out more about the business, I really, really appreciate the support and everyone who's connected today. I was amazed by how many people we've got from so many countries today. So it's amazing. Thank you very much. And for those of you that don't join in on Teams, I hope to see you again shortly. Bye. So it looks like we have some questions before I go over to Microsoft Teams. It looks like we have some questions live from the webinar. So to answer those, so can a teacher get direct feedback on a student's progress so as to target extra support? Okay, so we have a basic data program at the moment that stores the results, the evaluations. That's in Dentiversal Preclinical. So that's for the dentistry side, and that's ready today. So for that, yes. For Dentiversal Surgery, that's what we're working on at the moment to integrate the data side to it. And for Anesthesia, like I said, that's very much very early days of the production of the development for it. So for Dentiversal Preclinical, yes today. Dentiversal Surgery soon, and Anesthesia when it's ready for production, yes. So thank you very much for that. Okay, how quickly from order can you supply and install and support? Okay, so we've recently just had our first order in, and that's for deployment in September. So that we're looking at between about, I'd say, 5 to 6 weeks from order to delivery and installation. It also depends what it is that you want from the setup. So for the Model T, so the desktop simulator, that essentially we've tested, everything's working, we've got the specs for the setup that we want. So that's ready to go in that same sort of like 4 to 6 weeks timescale. For the Model L, the laptop, the portable one, the remote teaching, that we're looking for deployment in January. And again, once that's ready, it'd be 4 to 8 weeks delivery lead time. But to be safe, we say 3 months from order to delivery. But if you need it quicker, we can tend to do 8 weeks. It's pretty secure. And the last one for the question was just thank you for the presentation. Well, thank you, thank you to all of you for coming along again. And like I said, I'm now going to switch over to Teams unless there's any last minute questions which appear on here. So if any of you do join, I'll see you very shortly. But otherwise, a huge thank you again for your interest. It's been amazing start for us, especially getting started during this period, doing everything obviously remotely as well. So while you're there, let me go through the website and go to universal/talk and see whether everything's working okay. Okay, so it looks like the link's working. I've now joined in and it says we'll be starting very shortly, so it's a scheduled call. So thank you, and I'll see you all again next time. Bye bye.